goes. Did you see any? Was there any fights this weekend?
No, nothing worth mentioning.
I know we didn't initially mention this, but actually I was looking online about, I think it's 232 or 237. I think it's 230, might be 237. But you know about the title bout coming up in December 29th?
For what?
That's the one that has Cyborg and I'm talking about UFC, sorry. Cyborg and not Zingano, but what is her name? She's the current champ. I'm just brain farting all of a sudden. It just looks like a really good
Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, it was Amanda Nunes. Yeah, that's who it was.
Ooh, that's a good fight.
Yeah, and that's the, I don't know if that's the title card, but it might be but it might be just the undercard, because there's another good fight in there too. I think it's Jones versus Cormier, I think. Might be.
No, he's fighting Gustafsson.
Oh, that's what it was, Gustafsson. Yeah. But yeah, it looks dope, dude. Like, I was looking at the whole title card. I'm like, this is the best title card so far. And I guess that's going to be their New Year's battle, right?
Yeah, I'm cool off with Jones, but that Cyborg Nunes fight, that shit sounds dope.
Yeah, especially that now that Cyborg's off the juice. Well, as far as we know, she'll be off the juice.
Yeah, we'll see. She's still way bigger than her either way.
Oh yeah, isn't she like, they said that her weight's like something like 20 pounds bigger than most of the others?
Yeah, she shrunk a lot to be able to fight in the UFC.
Yeah, to the point, I heard that to the point of illness actually, and then otherwise they'd have to create a whole new division for her.
Yeah,
Nunes is the one that has the chance, because she actually has knockout power. She can swing.
Yeah, she got skill too. She got hands, but so does Cyborg. That shit's gonna be crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll see. I actually think that the hands game might be even, so it may get reduced into a tale of ground game. All about the ground game. That's my suspicion, at least.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Nunes would definitely be safer on the ground. And I would give the edge to Cyborg as far as hands goes.
Oh, for sure.
Her boxing is dope.
For sure. But she also, wouldn't you say that she has a better relationship with jiu-jitsu?
Well, yeah.
Or is it just that she doesn't have as much experience in actual fights versus sparring and stuff on the ground? Because she's never on her ass, basically.
Yeah, she never really goes down, but she does have a lot of experience in jiu-jitsu. And her husband is like a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So her ground game's pretty tight, but all the fights start on the feet, and these two are known for standing up.
That's true.
I'm not even sure how Nunes does on the ground. I have no idea about her ground game.
Yeah, because her record was basically ending fights in the early stages, right?
Yeah, she's just been knocking motherfuckers out.
Yep, pretty much across the board. But all right, getting on to this is actually we'll have you do the call in, man. I do it all the time. Your turn.
Do what?
Announce the show.
Oh, I guess. All right, you're joining us here at the Guv'ment Cheese Podcast Network Entertainment Hour. Gonna figure out a different name. I am one of two hosts. My name is Lo. Anthony's on the other line.
Yep.
And let's get into it. You wanted to talk about Daredevil first?
Unless you have a preference on the list of something else you'd rather start with.
No, let's get into it.
All right,
Daredevil. Still fresh.
Hell yeah, it is. You finished what, yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. I think I finished no, I finish yesterday? Well, technically, yeah, it was yesterday. It was just in the early AM. But give us your take.
I thought it was dope. I thought it so far out of all the Netflix seasons, this is the best season,
Oh, by far.
and it's not even close.
Yeah,
It
that's
is not even close.
well. It's what's interesting too, though. I mean, we'll get into the future of these shows in a little bit, but what's interesting too is actually, for all intents and purposes, I don't know if I count Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones was new this season, but I don't know how I felt about that. But having said that, of the other three shows, they were all the best seasons they've had so far. You know, and
Yeah,
so
they've all got way better.
Yeah, so it's like, whoa, this is like, but you know, as I told you before, I was like, this Daredevil just blew my mind. Like the multiple plot lines, the fact that they had the bravery to not have it only ride on the protagonist. You know, they kind of made, if you really look at it, they kind of made the protagonist just part of the ensemble, you know, because for all intents and purposes, the FBI character Nadeem, his story was up front, you know, just as much as the Bullseye character. Hopefully, I'm not spoiling that for anybody. And
it was in the trailers.
And Kingpin and Daredevil himself. What was intriguing, though, if people don't know this, and I didn't notice it unless I missed it, those early teasers for Daredevil are not actually in the movie, right? Like that sequence of him in the confessional wasn't in the show. I mean,
yeah, a lot of the stuff wasn't in the show, but it still gave you basic shit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Was still in. But yeah, the whole season was dope, and they finally figured out that you know, you need more than just darkness as a tone. There was tension, actual tension,
and actually something that you're fond of nailing and focusing on is there's risk. Like there's a sense of a possibility of losing something.
Yeah.
And that is typically in this genre, you just don't get that, right? It's always I mean, to the point where you could die and death is not permanent, without trying to twist the knife on Infinity War. But I just say that, like in this, you're like, oh shit, there's actual stakes, you know, and then you see a changed character. That was the other part I really liked about it, is everyone developed, well, except for one person, kind of. Well, she kind of developed. We just didn't like the way she developed, which is the Karen Page character.
She developed. It's not that I didn't like the way. I just thought it was too long.
Oh, that one episode, or just
that one episode was too long.
I thought there was a couple things with her that that one episode was too long for sure, which is kind of her origin story. The other thing that would kind of also, it didn't necessarily have to be. I didn't understand why it had to be there. They could have easily put that earlier in the season, you know, and it wouldn't have really. It probably wouldn't have interrupted the tension of the tension that they had going, the flow of tension that they had going. But what I was going to say is that I think she's the most unsteady in the show, in not just this season, but in general, because she's always on the verge of like being the fragile victim in tears, and as you point out, the quivering voice or whatever, or she like is raging and losing her shit, like when she did with the youngsters confronted her on the street and she pulled her gat.
Yeah,
I was kind of like, what the fuck, like which person are you? You know, I mean, admittedly, it's cool that she's complex enough to maybe not just be one stereotype, but it doesn't serve the story well or really her acting well, because if anything, she just comes across as hella needy and unstable, at least to me.
Yeah, for me, she's just too timid for somebody that's been through everything that she's been through.
Yeah, and the other thing that bugs me is we know she's supposed to become a love interest, right? and I just don't see it anymore. I kind of saw it as possible in the first, season, somewhat the second season, where everyone was kind of innocent. I'm talking about all the main characters, a little trifecta there. But now I'm kind of like, you just have hella baggage, like, why would I be along with you? But maybe that's where the ending point of the season was, because at the ending point of the season, it's like they do seem to all be on the same page and committed to like the office, the lawyer side of things that they had established in the very first season, which only lasted like 10 minutes, it seems.
Yeah. Well, as far as the love angle goes, now where we leave them off at, they finally see each other for who they actually are. We have two flawed individuals who both have abandonment issues, and they're going to get drawn towards each other because of that. In real life, that would be a very fucking toxic relationship.
Ain't that the truth?
Codependency is not codependency is not love. Something else.
It's not a pretty thing. And then oh man. But getting back to it, like I would actually take it further and say outside of Legion, and I've said this to you, it's actually the best of any of the shows. It's better than season-wise. Complexity, the acting, the stakes, everything in it has been better than any other Marvel show I've seen. Any of them. None of them hold a candle to this season. And I put so much so that also how things played out this season easily was of the same quality and caliber of like some of those neo-noir police procedurals that we get, that kind of outburst from old NYPD Blue stuff and stuff like that, but it's long type shit. I mean, very, very easily was on par with that shit. In fact, better than most of the shit that's out there now. Because now you really don't get that stuff in terms of season long. You get episodic stuff. But
it was better than all of it. The stakes were so goddamn high. They started off with killing FBI agents. Like, Jesus Christ.
Ain't that the truth?
The acting was great. Fucking like I was saying last night, Sister Maggie, every scene with her was gold.
Oh yeah. And actually like I didn't elaborate on this, but the reveal with her, I was kind of iffy on her casting initially, because for those that don't know, it's Joanne Whalley, or formerly Joanne Whalley Kilmer. You may know her as Princess, was it Sorsha, I think is her name, from Willow. It's probably her most famous role. Mad Mardigan's squeeze. But what I was gonna say was, typically she kind of plays, she's much older now, but she'd always kind of played the like the role that you would give to is that her name, Rachel Weisz, the girl from The Mummy?
Yeah.
Like that type of role. Obviously she's older now, but so this, I was kind of like, I hope that doesn't come through. That she'd be too kind of cutesy, not that I expect an older woman necessarily to be cutesy, but she just has that air about her. Kind of like a good example would be the woman from Forrest Gump, the one who plays for his mother, Allie.
Yeah.
She has that same kind of vibe even today, Having said that, when the reveal hits and everything after that, I was like, oh my God, this is perfectly cast. Because you actually you feel that this is the person from the flashback sequences, which is obviously a different actress, right? But you're like, you see the continuity between that. You actually see the feeling of the emotion, and it was a caliber enough actor to pull it off where it didn't seem like acting, And then everything after that, awesome, There's a lot of like very, very subtle acting she's doing. You actually, and I kind of looked at, I want to rewatch it again, the whole season, but I think there's a lot of subtle stuff that she's doing that throughout the whole season that we're not seeing based on her foreknowledge of the character. Like, and I mean like subtle things in the sense of like the way she looks at things, inflection, things like that. I think she's doing that throughout the entire season. Because where you really see that later, and I noticed it, was in the siege on the church when she's outside. There's a lot of interesting stuff she does with just looks.
Mm-hmm.
When she's engaged with a Bullseye and Nadim.
Yeah, she was awesome. And whoever wrote that dialogue for her, whoever wrote that character, fucking hats off. That was amazing.
Yeah, the
Her
only
wit had me rolling.
her wit was on point. Oh man. The only place I felt that it stuttered a little bit was the origin story for Karen Page a little bit. And then like you kind of mentioned, is I think that there was you could see the different writers at work in the last episode or so. Like it just seemed it stumbled a little bit tonally. Like it's almost like, oh, these are definitely separate stories and separate writers. It doesn't have the same feel. And I think some of that it came across in kind of some of the forced elements with Kingpin and Vanessa, or I should say Wilson and Vanessa. And
I didn't really like what they did with her.
I was hoping they'd bring her back sooner in the season, and then just made her a slow burning voice, kind of throughout the season, not necessarily involved, but just kind of there, accessible, if you will. It could have been a scheduling issue or not, or a financial issue, but that's what I was kind of hoping for. I thought it would have been cool if there was more interaction that way, and or even if that was one of the reasons why Fisk ends up in the hotel or in the penthouse kind of thing, right? Then it's like, well, I have a wife. And I thought that could work.
Maybe. I just think it was a mistake to make her as brutal as she turned out.
What was it that, like, was it the scene where she's in the control room and then she says, wouldn't it be better to eliminate the problem?
What was that scene? It was just her whole little monologues that she gave.
You mean when she's
talking about being lonely, when she confronts him about letting her into his life?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just everything about her seemed very... It was just too much. It was too much. So in contrast, it makes Fisk weak.
Mm-hmm.
And Fisk doesn't work for me if he's weak.
I think it would work better if there's certain background on her we don't have, and I kind of hope they go there. I think this isn't exactly in continuity with the comic, because in the comic, you're dealing with a character that was invented a long time ago and was derived through a very sexist lens. So she really was kind of just like not even the side piece, but like the off camera wife, the doting wife with her husband for a long time. And then in the last decade or two is when they started changing her up. But my view of that character was, it's one thing to have a love interest character with Fisk be, how to put it, to be accepting and seeing him as he is. My worry is that they leave that, and then her new kind of I'm involved relationship with Wilson Fisk as the development. And the reason I don't like that is because it reeks a lot of like a fetish, like a power fetish. And I think we've seen enough of that shit in real life and in television, of the woman just strictly attracted to power. I would like to see her become a more complex character, not just in the future, but actually in terms of how they establish her past. Because what I'd like to see is what we discover in the next season is that she comes to the table with something, not just the fact that she understands Wilson Fisk or he's in love with her or whatever. Instead, I'd like to see that we find out like she's a crime lord of her own, or something of her own in terms of caliber. Because so far, if you really look at all the stuff she's been in from the first season to this season, she's almost like this. Well, I just kind of met the random lady. She has a taste for art, and she's a bit sophisticated. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like that. Like I would like instead if we found out, for example, like she was one of the hand members of the council, or whatever, so something like that. I think if they did that, then it doesn't diminish Fisk in the way you're describing, but absolutely if they leave it kind of the way it is, where she's just kind of, I married my way to power type of thing, I think that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I just don't like the puppy dog shit.
Well, I thought it was good at the beginning where he talked. It was a little cheesy, admittedly, but Fisk's kind of monologue about prison, and he goes, "This is not really prison. Real prison is love."
Yeah,
and it was a little cheesy, but it worked. I think what they needed to do was double down on that, in relationship to how the two interact with one another.
That's different though. That's obsession. The obsession's fine. The puppy dog shit that he had with her when they were actually interacting, it didn't work for me. But like you were saying, if you changed her background, if she was less brutal and less just evil and more calculating, it would have been better.
Yeah, she has to be of equal wit, I think, in like a capacity, not just for brutality. But maybe they're sophisticated enough to do that. Because my problem with Wilson Fisk as originally presented was that was really all we got was this brutal guy, just with an anger problem. But in this season, I'm like, holy shit, that's Kingpin. I go, that is Kingpin right there,
Yeah, super calculating, super.
Oh yeah, having every fucking I love how they slowly but surely engineered everyone into a fucking corner. He made it so you had to be corrupt, essentially, because he compromised you. And then you find out he'd been doing it for years. He'd been planning all this stuff for years. And in a way, that is kind of what I didn't like about that end, because I do think he folded too quickly. And then that whole kind of kill me now type thing on one level works, because you can see that would be the Kingpin would like that. He would go that way with Daredevil, because it would mean that he beat Daredevil psychologically, turning him a monster. But in a way, we've already seen that. That's the Batman Joker relationship since forever, and it is the typical Kingpin Daredevil relationship. But what I didn't like was I've never liked in comics when they resolve shit with a fist fight. When you actually have a really good character, that's why I hated Doomsday as a character design. I was just like, or Bane, the original Bane, not the one that became more complicated. But either of them, I just thought were fucking stupid. I'm like, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna kill your iconic character in a fucking ongoing fist fight. That's it. There's nothing subtle here. There's nothing calculating here. Like, that bugs me. It was well deserved in that moment, the tension bringing it to a head, but there was also some slight missteps, because I kind of like, for example, I would have loved it if the cop, for example, didn't give the reveal at the end when he stormed the penthouse.
Yeah.
I was like, it would have been so much cooler if it did go in that direction in the next season, right? Where they still think Daredevil is fucking a murderer and all this other shit, and they actually think Bullseye is their Daredevil or something like that. I think that would have been dope. But we'll see. I mean, this fucking season in general blew my fucking mind. Like, I definitely did not foresee I mean, there were elements of this that were kind of advertised and known, like that, like for example, Daredevil not wearing the suit, that Bullseye was going to be there, or Return of Kingpin, shit like that. But in terms of the actual story, fuck no, I didn't predict any of this shit. You know, none of it.
Yeah, it really did go its own way.
It definitely is.
It borrowed certain like tonal shit from the comics, but that's probably about it.
And it definitely like just keep up this level of writing. That's all I gotta say, man. You guys hit your stride. Don't fuck with it. You know, if anything,
Yeah, they finally got the villains right. Thank God.
yeah, facilitate that shit. Give it more juice. You know, and it'll be like, because it was funny. I remember I was in the middle of watching it, and I'm like, wow, so much for the Michael Clark Duncan version ever making a reappearance, because I always liked that depiction of Kingpin, and I knew that D'Onofrio couldn't do that depiction, obviously.
Well, I think that's where that instinct comes from, because it mirrors the same thing in the movie. It's a fist fight because these are two fools from the streets, fighting for Hell's Kitchen.
Which that part does make sense. But in terms of we just saw all this shit play out, it's kind of like, dude, it shouldn't go down like this. Or Wilson Fisk should be smart enough to be like, no, I don't have to fight you. That's why
he was originally going to go there to kill him.
Yeah. Obviously. But no, I was thinking about it because I really loved Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin. There's a variety of stylistic elements to that version of the Kingpin that I thought were dope. And I actually thought the idea of casting Kingpin as a black man was fucking brilliant. But some of that physicality you could only get through Michael Clark Duncan, right? The voice, everything else, for example, was very just unique. Having said that, though, there was a point in watching the season where I'm like, fuck that version of the Kingpin, like, and the comic book version. This is something original, and I'm in. You got me,
Yeah, this is a mastermind right here.
Yeah, exactly. Like that, and Bullseye. Like I was the only issue I kind of had about Bullseye was I was like, man, he's in the FBI too fucking long. That was my original thinking. But when it comes down to motivation, where does he end up at the end? You're like, holy shit, we just saw this guy driven insane. Like he was already had issues. He was fragile. Now you see how he becomes not just weaponized, but deconstructed, and his psycho-emotional self kind of completely dismantled and redirected. Like they rebuilt that character right in front of our eyes, like a person, I should say, their personality, and that was fucking brilliant. And that was just because I think that if there's something that'll come up in the new season, there'll be more Wilson Fisk, how Wilson Fisk played him, like how they engineered Bullseye,
right?
Just by understanding his psychology better than he understood himself. And so that'll be fucking dope. But any event, all that shit, super fucking original. That was the fucking great part about it. It wasn't edgy because it was trying to be edgy, right? Just like Luke Cage's, like how did we phrase it in comparison to or how did you phrase it, I should say, in comparison to Black Lightning? You were saying that like one is a lived, like how blackness was used. Oh, you said it was a character. That's what it was. In Luke Cage, blackness is a character versus just people are black, right? Like they're living it. And I think that is something that was transcended here. It wasn't like they're trying to be a thing. It is just what it is.
Yes, sir. All right, yeah. Daredevil, super dope. I give that shit fucking 5 stars out of 5.
5 out of 5.
Fucking sick.
Did you think there was anything that you'd want to change up or you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm just looking forward to where they're going to go. I have no idea where they're going.
Yeah. It could be a very good drama, like a kind of gritty crime type drama, the way they set it up. I kind of part of me wants them to go there because I think they finally established a way where Hell's Kitchen itself, like in New York, is more than just uh, a backdrop. Because really, that's normally how it is in all the Marvel movies. New York is just a set, you know, it's a set of iconographic images that characters play around in. Here, you're actually seeing a mapping of something, of a neighborhood, you know. And so I like to see that mature some.
Right. All I know is that whatever they do, they need to match
In the
the.
other shows.
They just need to match that. The writing just has to be as good as far as the villains are concerned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like I was saying before, darkness as a tone. If that's all you have, it's bland as fuck. If you make the villains right, now you have tension. Now there's something to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's what makes this show stand out above all the rest. These villains are so fucking scary. I had chills during some of these scenes. I don't really watch well, I'm not gonna say shows like this. I'm not very good at binge watching shit. Like if I fall out of interest, then I just stop watching.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, episode 4, this is whack, I'm done. That never happened with this show. This is the first time like I finished the show in one sitting in a long time.
And it definitely had those ominous moments. Like there's shit that slips by that what's really awesome was there's referential moments that the protagonist or the person they're talking about isn't even in the scene, but the way they're referenced, you're like, fuck, you know. And it could be one, like how they look at Daredevil, for example, or the one that really caught me was when the FBI agent in charge turns to the Nadim character and he says, I used to have 2 kids. And I was like, holy fuck, you know, like I was like, God damn, I go, fucking Wilson Fisk, you know, and she just matter of factly is like, I'm trying to keep the one I have alive, you know, and you realize how fucking lethal he really is, you know, and it makes all that, like in that one moment, because prior to that, you're like, fucking bitch, you corrupt bitch, you know, like, and then that moment comes, you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
You've been fucked into this too, worse than probably most everyone. You know, I was just like, God damn. But in that same moment, like I said, all of a sudden that's like, that's ominous as fuck. Where you're thinking about Kingpin, you're like, fucking A.
When you talk about ominous, one of the things that stood out to me too with this show was the score and the way they used Daredevil's hearing.
Oh yeah.
Like they set up some crazy shit with that. That whole scene in the newspaper thing that set it off.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You hear something? Screaming. I was like, holy shit. Something, people are about to die.
Like,
get the fuck out of there.
I mean, I had my criticism, which I mentioned to you about kind of how they did camera work. But as the story evolved, like kind of Daredevil coming more into himself, right? Really, I guess you could say he's healing. That kind of went away, my opinion of some of the camera work. And I really loved exactly what they did right there. You're exactly right. Like, I'm like, oh shit, this is cool. Now you're using his powers, not in a spectacular way, but in a way where it drives the plot forward. You know, it's driving things and it has a tonal voice of its own.
Yeah, the court scene too.
Yeah, perfect. Another perfect example where you're like, oh fuck yeah, you guys did it. And then he's just like, oh my, you know, it just fucking he becomes the buzzkill galore. You know, I was just like, damn.
Yeah, that shit was crazy.
And they actually, if you think about it, here's another intriguing thing. They did the same thing with Kingpin. They just did it differently. And the way they did it is one, the ominous presence of Kingpin and the implications of what he may or may not do. Right? Like perfect examples, like in the meeting, we only refer to him by his code name. You know, and that was one element. Or the inverse of that is Kingpin having all the cameras. So in a weird way, that is his other superpower. He's ever present. He's omnipresent. And that actually is exactly what people are feeling like. They can't say shit. They can't do shit because he is there watching. He knows everything.
Yeah, and the fact that he walks in that room and it's a bunch of characters that we've seen before.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, holy shit, that guy?
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh shit, all of those characters. Oh shit, you know. And then he just offs the one dude too, which was kind of cool. I thought.
Yeah. Well,
you
moving on.
Yeah.
And speaking of Netflix shows, Iron Fist and Luke Cage have been canceled.
I was gonna say one last thing about Daredevil for anyone that hasn't seen it. They topped the hallway fight scene. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. Yeah, fucking they canceled them. Have you kept up to date on? Because I know there's been kind of like new stories kind of dropping, elaborating on the Luke Cage situation in particular. What's the latest on that?
I haven't seen anything new. All I've seen is the same comment being blasted out there that there were creative differences with the showrunners about season 3, so they decided to end it.
So, do you think that that is it? That's the final nail. Like, is that gone? Because they did say, and I think they did also say, just like they did with Iron Fist, right, that he'll be back or something like that.
No, they did not. That's the big difference.
Oh,
Iron Fist will be back in another show, probably. Luke Cage, we don't know. It's all up in the air right now.
I suspect they'll get Luke Cage back. It may not be well elaborated upon, though, only because the actor playing Luke Cage, his way into their TV universe was never dependent upon the show, right? Because originally he was just a guest actor on Jessica Jones, right? And then I don't think he suspected that he might get one season, but I don't think he expected to get more than that initially. So I think he's outside of the actual actor. I think is kind of outside the esprit de corps of the writers of that show. You know, I think he's just, I'm a paid actor. I go where they tell me to some degree.
Well, we'll see. But so far, nothing announced for Luke Cage. People are speculating that maybe they'll show up in Heroes for Hire.
Power
or
Man.
that Netflix will announce some other show. The problem with that is that Netflix doesn't have the rights to Heroes for Hire.
Ah, I didn't know that. So that means if it comes back, which would solve the creative problem, it would be fully under Disney control, possibly, and just be part of their streaming service.
Well, if they don't bring it back on Netflix.
Yeah. I was watching something today talking about, I guess it's going to be called Disney Play. I guess that's what the streaming service is going to be called, Disney Play. And my sense of it, reading, like, I was reading about the next 3 years of the MCU, like what we actually know is supposed to come out, and then related kind of news stories. And I realized that the Disney doesn't have a choice. They have to put a marquee television program or streaming program, I should say, into this.
That's what they're doing with the Avengers shows.
I don't think those are enough, because those are definitely marquee characters and will generate some buzz and interest. But I actually think there's a property that they're going to make that is going to predominantly be just television, but it'll be a major property. It might be Fantastic Four, it might be X-Men, something along those lines. But I think that they're going to do that because then they'll have glue in the streaming service. And so within that, having said that, that really sets the tone for their version of what broadcast content will be in terms of the Marvelverse. And because I don't see a Luke Cage or an Iron Fist being, the marquee version of that. It's just none of the current properties have that. Daredevil even doesn't really have that. Daredevil has its own unique niche, for sure. But I don't think it has enough of a niche where you're going to get, I'm going to subscribe just for this show, So I think
Right.
that might change it. Having said that, though, within that, they need a suite of shows. So I don't see why they wouldn't bring them back,
But why would they take them? If Disney takes them, then the rating isn't MA anymore. The rating goes down.
Oh, that's a good point. I think that's a question that's going to come up, though, too, that what there may be, and what it may be is a selective content option. Because with the tech, I don't see why you couldn't do it, right? That you pay for like Disney A and Disney B. Disney B has adult, not like adult, like, but mature content as well as all the other stuff. And then the other one is strictly kids content or G-rated, PG-13 rated content. Because I don't see why they wouldn't do that. Or it's a built-in control for their service.
Well, maybe we'll see what happens. If they do bring him back, who knows if they'll bring the team back that was with him.
Yeah. And that was that. Did it say that in the articles? Like, was the tension between Netflix's?
Yeah, it was between Netflix and the creators of the show.
Oh, okay. So Netflix specifically had we want the show to do X, Y, and Z, and
Right.
creators are like, well, we work for Marvel. No.
Cooker was like, nah, bro, we got our own ideas.
Yep. And did anyone from ABC chime in? Because isn't ABC controlling all that?
No, Netflix controls their own content.
I thought all the Marvel television shows went through ABC, even though it is on Netflix. But
Well, I'm not sure, but obviously Netflix has some say so in the content, or this would not be an issue.
yeah, well, Disney has money; they can buy themselves out of their contract if they really need to. And this fast tracks other new Netflix content.
We'll see how it goes. I wish they really wouldn't. Just let Netflix be Netflix and let those shows stay on there. I don't want everything to be TV 14 and shit.
Yeah.
Especially from what we already seen. Daredevil season 3 would not happen on the Disney
Yeah,
streaming
sure.
service.
I mean, for fuck's sake, that one scene alone, the scene in the newspaper, that would have never happened. It would have, and fuck. Now I think about none of it would, because then there's all the drug sequences too.
Yeah.
Like,
As for Iron Fist, though, there is a fan campaign to try and bring Iron Fist back.
I think that what was the female one called? The that you mentioned?
Jones?
No. The team comic.
Oh, Daughters of the Dragon?
Daughters of the Dragon. I think that would be better, and I would like to see it for a very specific reason, and also because it seems to be where they have the glue to be able to do it, versus Daredevil not being able to do it, and I really wouldn't want to go in that direction yet, which is the mysticism element, of the hand and kind of Eastern powers and all that sort of stuff. I really would like to see that pursued. It's cool if you have a power man in that, the kind of sidekick twofer style type stuff. And in a manner of speaking, even throwing Daniel Rand in that as the odd man out because he's the white dude, right? Because my problem was it didn't really work that great when Danny Rand is the more Asian than thou character, right? Aside from the fact that it just didn't have enough martial arts or good martial arts. But if they bring him back, I'm worried that would be kind of where it would just focus too much on him. Whereas I'm way more interested in his girlfriend by the end of last season. Not to say I wasn't titillated by, that last the after credit scene, but where his girlfriend was at was much cooler.
Yeah, and that was the specific direction they went. So if they brought it back, I think that's what they would continue with. I don't see Danny Rand taking control again. Either way, I want to see season 3. They brought in a new showrunner. He fucking did an amazing job with season 2.
Yeah,
I want to see where he goes with season 3 now that he has his own foundation. Now that he doesn't have to fix anything.
Yeah. They need to do something because, okay, like comparatively, they've canceled 2 other shows prior to this. And there simply is no comparison, like in terms of the quality of those shows previously canceled and these shows, which I think both of them showed noticeable, measurable improvement. I don't know the metrics necessarily at Netflix itself in terms of what it's draw, like if it did draw more viewership or whatever.
No one does.
I know that they definitely got more improved reviews, like Rotten Tomato scores and shit like that. But what would bug me is if they're left dangling just because in both series, yes, they had their own, they completed the arc of their story within that season, but they left off in such a great place to develop both Iron Fist and Luke Cage that it'd be a fucking tragedy to not follow through, with some form of a follow-up. You cannot say that around like Inhumans or Agent Carter. Both of them, they deservedly went the way of the dodo. Not that Agent Carter was terrible. It was a period show, So I'm and those I'm cool with, like, yeah, they should cancel and die. Leave them alone. Reference them, not at all. But I don't want to do that with Iron Fist and Luke Cage.
Yeah, you can't leave Luke Cage off. You cannot continue that fucking story.
Can't not continue it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they finally get into the Luke Cage, and that we've been waiting to see, and 2, it actually happens to be the edgy version of him. The Luke Cage that isn't just the good guy no more. Right now, he's the G, right, or wannabe G.
Yeah, he's still trying to be good, but that's not going to last.
Yeah, and we know as comic fans that he turned that direction for like 3 years, I think it was, within the comics. They made him almost like a bad guy, right? And it became a problem. And then he turned him into a much more rich character in the aftermath of that, when he becomes kind of a hero again, right? And then
I was kind of hoping that he would have showed up in Daredevil season 3.
Yeah.
I like the meeting.
Oh, that would have been fucking dope. That would have been scarily dope. Wow, I didn't think about that. That would have been fucking really good.
Yeah, that would have been sick. But anyways, go ahead.
Well, they finally got him in that spot, and I'm like, and they had the fucking best villains. They had one of the best villains that they'd ever had. Cottonmouth was all right, but I'm sorry he didn't have nothing on our boy this season.
Yeah, I disagree.
You prefer Cottonmouth?
Cottonmouth was dope. I don't prefer Cottonmouth. I wouldn't say that he doesn't hold a candle to fucking Bushmaster. I think they were both pretty good, but I do like Cottonmouth.
And I also liked how they developed what's his name's character, the dude from formerly of Sons of Anarchy. He was the one that gets outed as a snitch. God, Damn, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't watch Sons of Anarchy.
No. Outed as a snitch on Luke Cage. Remember at the end?
Yeah, but how would I know by you saying that he was in Sons of Anarchy? I don't know that actor, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. He was. I think they placed him in a good position to be a criminal leader in his own right.
Oh, he's supposed to be.
Yeah, he is supposed to be, definitely.
Yeah, everything was pretty dope about that show. They got the villains right too. They just weren't as menacing because Bushmaster's kind of a good guy. You're kind of rooting for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he has a justified origin, right?
Yeah, and he has rules.
Yeah, he does. And also, we fucking just had Typhoid Mary. You can't bring in fucking Typhoid Mary and then not fucking bring her back.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck, man? You just brought in really cool shit, and you destroyed the hand completely, essentially.
Yeah, they got to figure something out over there.
Yeah, it's tragic that it kind of went that way.
They had their best phase ever, and then just fall apart.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. I mean, we've had 4 shows. The least, and it wasn't bad. It was just a fucking downer, like they all are. Jessica Jones' season was probably my least favorite, but that's just because it's just kind of depressing, like her seasons always are.
Which season are you talking about?
The last one. This last one.
Oh, I hated the second season. I was trash.
You thought it was worse than the first one?
Yeah, the first one, it wasn't even all that bad. It was just, there's just some pacing problems, and I didn't like the actress.
Yeah.
But the story was good. The villain was good.
Yeah, everyone loved the villain.
Second season, it was just all horrible. It's fucking soap opera.
Yeah, it suffered from the echoes of the Defenders, I would say. Because I think it had to tailor itself into the Defenders to some degree, or out of the Defenders. I don't know how you want to quantify it. But in any event, yeah, that was the weakest of this season so far. But
yeah,
if they keep improving like this, fucking A, the Punisher must. I hope the Punisher is as dope as is in the same. Is smoking what everyone else is smoking and doing some good shit. Because I'll look forward to that fucking season, And it also makes sense to go back to kind of what you said about they had good villains, but they weren't necessarily like the same villain, and that's the way in terms of Daredevil, because for sure Kingpin should be the best villain. That is what he's known for. Of when it comes street level villains, he is the master, right? And I like that he got that. So I don't mind that the other villains are a little less competent, less menacing, if you will.
Word.
Should we? Is there one more?
You wanted to talk about Venom?
Yeah, we can talk about Venom a little bit. We'll wrap it up with Marvel. Wrap up Marvel and move on to another session. Yeah, Venom. I kind of mentioned this to you, which is I saw Venom in the theater again, and I kind of wanted to revisit it. One, it is good. It's still good. You can definitely still see it's an older script, almost a Raimi era script, which is what I actually found out later on that it was. That is a script that most of its component parts have been floating around since the Sam Raimi era. It would have been like what it was. It would have been what was being led into should the Sam Raimi films have continued. The Sony era Sam Raimi films, even though Sam Raimi himself, I would have had no interest in that. He was forced to use Venom in Spider-Man 3. They were planning on doing the same thing with the Amazing Spider-Man series and eventually bridging into Sinister Six. That's why those trailers, the early trailers, of Amazing Spider-Man 2 had the symbiote in it, right?
Mhm.
So, having said that, like rewatching it, I realized because I watched some less than legitimate versions originally, and to be honest, some of the less than legitimate versions had some better stuff on them. Like for example, it wasn't so saturated, or it was more saturated, I should say, versus the actual film. I'm talking about physically, like visually. The actual film is almost too bright and too clear. Like you can totally, like for me, it's like okay, it's clearly digital, you know, and it was just I don't know. I almost it added to the realism as opposed to the kind of surreal element that I want out of a comic film. And then the other one that was really noticeable was the the tone. Then I finally noticed the tonal shifts. Everyone had been talking about that, and I didn't see it in the previous versions. And then this time I saw the previous viewings. I mean, and this time I saw it, and I was like, oh, okay, now I see what they mean. It isn't just the dialogue; it's like stuff like expressions and tonality of how things are going. That there's definite tonal shifts in the film, but that's a minor thing. All this is minor. The thing I wanted to really talk about more so was this Into the Spider-Verse element, which pretty much everyone has kind of that has talked about it either has talked about it as a throwaway, like that was just added later. That's like a commercial, it's not has nothing really to do with the film, blah blah blah. And then in watching it, if you're perceptive, it's perfectly clear that no, this is intentionally part of the film, and it is the same universe. It's not just some animated commercial at the end, right? It is, in fact, they're saying that it's a multiverse. In this multiverse, you have cartoon styled characters, a version of New York, right? And this exists in the same multiverse as Venom. And having said that and watching it and then calculating things out, it's become more and more clear like how Sony's going to move in terms of their own pocket universe of like Spider-Man, as well as Marvel. Uh, did you read any of the latest kind of stuff about Marvel and the contract around Spider-Man?
I have not.
So it turns out that part of that contract, for one, I think it expires in a year or two. I think the core elements of it did, but actually it was more expansive than people realize, and Feige had more foresight than people realized, because it turns out that a lot of the core, most famous Spider-Man villain characters were part of that contract deal. And so Sony can't use the Green Lantern, for example, or not Green Lantern, I won't say the Green Goblin, in their films for the future, right? They can't really do a Sinister Six. So if we do see a Sinister Six, it's gonna be through Marvel. And supposedly that's the same thing that also holds true with why the Black Cat, Silver Sable type stuff is kind of on hold, as well as Craven, I guess, supposedly, because certain characters Marvel had first dibs on as part of that agreement. And that's why the new Spider-Man film is supposed to be very significant. The Far From Home film. The Far From Home film is finished. There'll probably is going to be some reshoots, I'm sure, but the film is actually done, and the actual principal photography. So now it's just post-production effects, right? But that film is supposed to take place immediately after the events of Avengers 4. And it actually is going to serve as a key film in kind of establishing what both the borders of the Marvel universe are going to be, as well as perhaps by implication what the Spider-Man universe is not going to be. Like, what are its limits? And so I'm very curious to see how they're doing this, because in the end, what we're seeing is Venom is an experiment that did very, very well, because it's now, according to the box office, it was #1 2 weeks in a row, 2 weekends in a row. And it has actually beat, I think, pretty much every other superhero film in terms of its kind of longevity and staying power. And that sends a validation message to Sony. And so I'm wondering if that is going to give Sony the ability to be a little bit rebellious in terms of how they deal with Disney and Marvel, and in terms of what they view as their own properties. I'm talking about Sony viewing Spider-Man as their own property.
That's surprising that they can't use Green Goblin. I thought that all came in the package.
Nope. Supposedly, well, no, it did originally. Yes, definitely. I guess in the renegotiation that brought about Homecoming, Marvel actually kind of set up there's a proviso, some kind of provision in there that said, we want these things. I suspect what it really was is, and I'd love to see the contract, but is that they said, okay, you fucked up these characters. We will do the work of rebranding and resurrecting this brand, which is our brand, and we're going to contract for it. And these are the terms. But if we do it, we are doing it. And it could actually relate, ironically, to this same sort of friction that was encountered in Netflix indirectly, in the sense that there's Marvel's vision and then there's their licensees' vision. And in the case of Sony, I suspect that because the last films didn't do well, I'm talking about the pre-Homecoming films didn't do well, that their hands are kind of, they were in a bad position and their hands were tied. So they agreed to terms that were not to their advantage in terms of control, but to their advantage to some degree in terms of financing. Because from the other thing I heard, it basically is that Marvel pretty much doesn't make shit off of the Homecoming movies. You know, and it basically doesn't make any money, which I don't totally agree with. I'm pretty sure that Disney makes some money off of that in some way, shape, or form, unless that what they meant is they don't get any distribution money.
Maybe. I know they get all that fucking merchandising money.
Fuck yeah, they do. Yeah, they must. And the other reason is this actually feeds into the other rumor that we heard related to Loki and Scarlet Witch, because alongside that was, oh no, you're going to see Spider-Man on Disney Play. That's was the implication, right? That was the rumors internally. And if the other thing that's been happening is, I don't know if you've been watching, there's some really good interviews that are coming out with like Tom Holland, with Hiddleston, also with Olsen, and Ruffalo. And all of them, I think, have kind of gained the aptitude to not step in landmines anymore in terms of like overspilling the beans. Like, they're on message. Does that make sense? But
Yep.
what's intriguing is all of their messages are about the future, and they're not necessarily about the films. They're talking about longer term kind of goals and for their characters specifically, like where the character is going to go, and with the implication that they're going to be serialized to some degree. And so it was very intriguing that is the case. Because the other thing is that in relationship to Homecoming, and this is why Ruffalo like teased about Avengers 4, is, and it makes sense, is they're shifting tiers. Because now you're not going to have, supposedly, we're not going to have a Chris Evans a Robert Downey Jr., kind of these like, they're not driving the franchises anymore. So the franchise leaders are going to be shifted over to these younger people. And so Ruffalo will be kind of the old man, so to speak. And so would Helmsworth would be like the old man. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this shifting taking place to a next generation, which totally fucking makes sense to me. Because how the fuck else are you going to keep a franchise alive for a new generation for another decade plus? Or a brand, I shouldn't say franchise, a brand, which is the MCU. And keep it fresh.
Right. Gotta add new characters. Go younger.
New characters, new actors, all that shit. What I would like to see is, I actually really think there's space for 2 Spider-Men. You know? And they could do 2 Spider-Verses, or like, as long as they don't clutter it up the way the comics actually are, where you have way too many fucking timelines and way too many universes. You know, you have ultimates, you have what ifs, you have, you know, all these different kind of parallel universes. I would hate for them to do that. But I could see them doing a Miles Morales kind of universe and a Peter Parker universe. And I really hope they do. And actually, I would, and we've discussed this briefly, I wouldn't mind seeing that if so, under Sony's tutelage. I think that would be fucking awesome. You know, if you let Sony say, hey, we're going to experiment. We're still connected. This is loosely connected in a multiverse. And we may drive in a certain direction, but we're going to do our own style of the own take on these characters. And Marvel's going to also do their own take. You know? And it's actually,
I want to see a Miles Morales hood comedy.
That would be
directed
good.
by Chris Rock.
I would like to see that. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing a Spider-Man shift into a comedic tone, which I think we're going to get with the Into the Spider-Verse, but I mean overtly, as opposed to like kind of like Ant-Man. Does that make sense? Because right now that's not what we have with Spider-Man. You know, he has his moments. It's very funny, but instead it's really a kid's, a teenager's movie, right? As far as a brand goes. But I wouldn't mind seeing it becoming comedic, as long as it doesn't become campy like the old Raimi shit.
No, I was dead serious when I said hood comedy.
Hey, they got the man right there playing his uncle. Could write the shit. That's for damn sure.
I think that would work. No, I want to see Chris Rock.
Chris Rock.
Or Rock's a good director. And a pretty good writer.
Actually, yeah, I could see it, particularly if you think about his TV show.
And he's from New York, so he could capture the hell out of that shit, which he's already done.
Because with Everybody Hates Chris, right? Like, he could do that, like a young person of color type of film.
Yeah, see Spider-Man get his ass whooped for coming home late from fighting crime.
and also supplemented with the skills and talents of Donald Glover. That shit could be dope. You know, yeah. Hopefully Donald Glover hasn't totally ruined his relationship with Marvel after the Deadpool fiasco. But maybe he didn't. That could.
We'll see. He is already set up in the Marvel Spider-Man universe.
Yes, he is. It's Prowler, right? That's his character. That's Morales' uncle's character is Prowler, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that'd be dope.
All right. Let me stop that one.